Hello?
Hello, it's me.
It's me.
I've been wondering if after all these years you'd like to be.
Can you hear me? Hi, this is Katie.
And this is Nathan.
And you're listening to Queen's Podcast, the show about badass women in history. Boudica.
Rockin' everywhere.
Rockin' everywhere.
Slaying everywhere.
Oh, girl.
Boudica's a bad bitch.
She came to slay. So if you haven't figured out yet, we are discussing Boudica today.
And I'm drinking a Newcastle brown ale imported directly from England.
And I am drinking a red apples ale because I don't like the taste of beer, and this tastes like apple juice.
So, let's talk a little bit about Boudica. She was born around 30 AD in Britannia.
Circa.
Yeah, circa.
We don't know.
We really don't know. I've heard 25 AD.
There's really no way of knowing.
Let's just round up and say 30.
So she was born circa 30 AD. She was queen of the Iceni tribe. She led a major revolt, which nearly resulted in Rome abandoning its holdings in Britannia.
Okay, wait. Whoa, hold up. Back up.
Back it up.
Back it up, bitch.
Back it up.
So what was the political climate at the time?
Britannia.
So pretentious.
I know, that's what Rome came in and conquered, modern day UK and called it Britannia.
And it was basically just a bunch of tribes and client states under Rome, and it wasn't really like what we see as England today. I think there were like 30 tribes.
There was like
in the
30
area.
tribes in what we see as like modern day England and Wales. And that's what Rome was after, because they were like, fuck Scotland, that's the boonies,
right.
basically.
But basically to the Romans, almost all of Europe, Britain was like at the edge of the world.
Yeah, no, they looked at that island, and it was called the island at the edge of the world, and they thought, you go past that, and you basically fall off the face of the earth.
The world is flat, you go to England, you die.
And they were like, the people there are heathens, they're cannibals, they have tails.
Tails? Like, what the fuck? Where did they come up with that
Well,
shit?
they didn't conquer Britain until like 43 AD, whereas the rest of Europe had been conquered by Rome well before, so it was just kind of shrouded in mystery.
And honestly, Boudica could have changed all of that.
Yeah, so Rome almost backed out of Britannia because of her, and we are going to tell her story today.
So, where is she actually from?
So, she was queen of the Iceni tribe, which inhabits modern-day Norfolk.
Norfolk? How do you say that again?
Well, okay, so, I always say Norfolk, but my husband, who is English, always makes fun of me, and he says Norfolk, but I just feel like an ass saying it like that.
Norfolk?
They're from Norfolk. Yeah, sure. Anyway.
So basically, the Iceni are these very rich and powerful tribe that inhabited Norfolk today.
And around 43 AD, Emperor Claudius...
You'll hear him later.
...rolls in, and he's like, hey, look, we're Rome, we're going to take over. And the Iceni agree to be a client state, which is basically they pay taxes to Rome. Rome is the big boss. They still get to run their day-to-day as they usually would, and they also get the protection of Rome. So basically they're Roman citizens, but running their own shit.
Yeah, and the Iceni saw their neighbors to the south, the Cativolini, as making money off of Rome. So they're like, cool.
Tight.
We're gonna do this shit too.
And also they saw some of their neighbors getting killed. Murdered the fuck out of.
So they were like, well, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that too.
So basically they were like, Rome, we're going to lean in. Sounds good.
And Boudica, she's the queen of the Iceni. So we're talking about the Iceni because Boudica was the queen of it. And she was married to Prasutagus, who was her hottie with a body man.
Hottie alert.
Hello.
Yeah, it's funny. The Iceni actually minted coins that have survived to today. They're actually in the Norfolk Museum. Sorry, Steve. And like you can go and see coins with Prestigius's like image on them, which I think is cool.
And that is totally. And the Romans like described Cassius Dio actually described Boudica as being a very tall woman with fierce eyes and a harsh voice, so I think she may have smoked a little bit of a few cigarettes. Anyway, she had tawny...
Or something.
Yeah, right. She had some tawny hair, which... What color is tawny?
So I had to put tawny into Google, and it said, like, red blonde.
Yeah, I
so
think
strawberry
it's like...
blonde
I think it's like
thinking.
technically, like, different colors.
So this was... Cassius Dio was writing this about 100 years. Like, he's like the primary source. There are two sources for Boudica, both written years after her death. And so I wonder if this was like actually a good description of her, or like just what they thought all Celtic women looked like.
Yeah.
These barbarian women with long red hair, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not 100% sure if her husband Prestigius was actually born a king, or if he was just part of the noblemen that was like, hey, Rome, I'm gonna rule this land because I have a lot of money. I like you. Love you, Rome. And I think that's kind of how it was.
Yeah, it's very possible that they rolled in and the actual leader of the Iceni was kind of resistant. And they were like, well, we got this other nobleman. We'll just put him in place. Or if he was already king of the Iceni. So that's unclear. But either way, while Prestigius was alive, the Iceni lived in perfect peace with Rome. They were buddies. He paid them what was due. They offered protection. Everything was great.
I mean,
while
it
he was
was
alive.
so great that he even like signed in his will to put like half of his land with his two daughters, which makes sense because I mean, it's his daughters.
Yeah.
And the other half to Emperor Nero.
So that wasn't unheard of. It was kind of almost just like a gesture of goodwill. It was just being like, it's going to go half to my family and half to Rome because you're going to continue to offer us protection and we're going to continue to pay you taxes, etc., etc.
And it really wasn't uncommon in Celtic tribes to like leave your land to women.
Yeah, women rule was not unheard of.
But in Rome, they were like, fuck no.
No.
That's not how we do things. Women don't rule land here. So basically, Prestigius dies and the shit hits the fan.
Shit hits the fan. He leaves in his will split rule to his two daughters, who at this time are somewhere between like 10 and 13 years old.
So they're tweens.
They're tweens. So the governor of Britannia was this dude named Gaius Suetonius Paulinus.
Okay, good try. What are we going to call him? It's really hard to say his name.
We just call him Gay Serotonin Paula.
Gay Serotonin Paula.
Gay Serotonin Paula, GSP for short.
He was oppressing the fuck out of Wales.
So he was busy. So he gets note like, hey, this woman wants to run her show. And he is like, I'm busy oppressing the Welsh. I'm going to send like a different group of guys to go over there and like handle it. So they get there and I don't know who the soldiers were, but I don't know that they have any names that have come down, but they're like, look at me. I'm the captain now.
It was super weird for a woman to rule at that time.
In Roman culture.
Yeah, so
because
obviously,
women, like, if a woman argued with her husband or her father in public, it was totally acceptable in Roman culture to just beat her to death.
And that's like, and they even said that the Iceni tribe like owed Rome a bunch of debt.
Oh no, so they roll in and they're like, it's not cool for women to rule. You owe us a shitload of money, so we're gonna take over. Boudica was like, wait, hold up. No, we're going to continue to split rule.
Yeah, my husband left us half
Nothing
of it to you.
has to change. So, like, she was totally cool to, like, roll with them. So I think they were actually waiting for Prestigius to die, and then regardless of who he passed it on to, roll in. But it just happened to be a woman and two young girls. So they saw, like, an easy target. Because Boudica protested the Romans, like, taking over, she was like, no. The Romans were like, oh, well, let me show you how we treat women who give us lip in Rome. And they tied her up and they flogged her, which means basically just beat the shit out of her.
Beat the shit out of her.
And then raped her 2 daughters in front of her.
So basically,
First of all, let's just
fucked up.
Let's take a second to just go, ugh.
That's fucked up. Like for a mom to have to watch her children get like raped,
And just what a gross thing. Like, couldn't you just like tax them more? Couldn't you?
And like Boudica at the time, she was paying taxes. She
considered herself a Roman woman because they had the protection of Rome. They paid taxes to Rome. They paid allegiance to Rome.
And rape was illegal in Rome.
Yeah, like back then, I mean, you could rape your slaves, which isn't good, but to rape a Roman woman, I mean, you would get castrated. So she could have gone through like the proper channels and brought this back to...
She could have brought it to HR.
She could have brought it to Gay Serotonin's HR and been like, hey, this shit went down. That is not the route she decided to take. But I do want to talk for a second about what this rape symbolized, besides just a gross, like, use of force.
It's basically the Romans asserting their power and saying that they're gonna make these women, quote-unquote, submissive to them.
And also, it's like saying, oh, these are the people that are supposed to carry on your dynasty. Well, no one's going to want to marry them now. And maybe we'll impregnate them and they'll have bastards, basically. Like,
yeah, no, but that's common.
It was a shitty thing to do, and it was also saying this is what we think of your rule, and like effectively ending the Iceni power.
And can you imagine being Boudica and like having to sit there and watch your daughters get raped?
After you just got like flogged,
Beat
which
the
means
fuck
like
out of.
whips and shit. Oh,
I would go into Mama Bear beast mode.
Oh, well, beast mode.
She fucked shit up.
Boudica was like, you know what I'm gonna do?
I'm gonna slay.
Slay.
So she starts going to the neighboring tribes and is like, hey, this is the shit that's going down, and we're mad as hell, and we're not going to take it anymore. And the other tribes have been going through some shit with Rome, which we'll get into later.
And they're also mad as hell.
And they're like,
they're
hell
not
yeah.
going to take it anymore either.
We're not going to take it.
The
no,
Icenes,
we're
not
gonna
gonna take it.
No, they didn't fucking take it.
No. Nah, dude, is what they said.
So Queen Bee basically gathers her troops together, and she gets her number one friends called the Trinovantes, and she gathers them in to go into the battle.
They were also another big tribe, but we will get into the Trinovantes in more detail later.
So how did she go to decide to go to Camelot?
So this story is so weird, but I love it. So supposedly she gets a rabbit, or a hare, as it's said in the stories and everything.
She's got a hare.
She puts it up her skirt.
A hairy pussy.
Oh, she's got a hairy pussy now. I'm sorry. And hashtag sorry.
It's supposed to invoke the power of the old Celtic tribe goddess Andraste.
Andraste. So she puts this hair up her skirt, invokes the power of Andraste,
the goddess of warfare,
and then lets it go. Then
it runs in some direction or another.
And she says, supposedly it runs in the direction of the Roman capital of Britannia, Camelodonum. And so she goes, well, Andraste wants us to go to Camelodonum. But I feel like they would have gone to Camelodonum anyway, because it was the capital.
Yeah.
So I feel like anyway the rabbit would have ran, she would have been like,
oh, it's Camelodonum.
Andraste wants us to go this way.
Let's run.
Let's go. But anyway, that's what they did. I want to, talk about, just for a hot second, I want to digress and talk about the adorable Roman names for British towns.
Okay, so we have Camelodunum.
And that was Colchester.
Londonium.
Which is London, which I wish they would have just left. I like Londonium. It sounds so epic.
I know. Mamusium?
Mamusium is Manchester. Durnoveria
I'm
is
too drunk for this.
Dorchester. Yeah, don't try to pronounce any of these names under the influence. You're going to get them all kinds of wrong.
So they start marching to Seatown, Camelodunum,
Camelodunum.
Yeah. So they march to Camelodunum with okay.
At this point, they've gathered, they're just walking through all the tribes, and they're like, it makes me think of, have you ever seen Love Actually?
Yes.
You know, whenever Colin Firth is walking through the town and everyone's like, he's going to propose to that girl, and by the end, they've got 100 people behind him.
Yeah, and it's also like the Forrest Gump whenever he's running the mile across the country.
It's kind of like any movie you've ever seen, and, like, people just join, except the people just joining her group are like,
hey, I fucking hate Romans. I do too. Come on, girl.
And so they're bloodthirsty. They grab, they don't have swords. They don't have shields.
No, this is not like your well-equipped
bows
army.
and arrows.
Nope.
So these are just motherfuckers grabbing their shovels, grabbing their pitchforks, grabbing their, like, kitchen knives.
Ready to fucking fight. And they're going to Camelot. And let's give, like, a quick rundown of Camelot.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Was the former capital of the Trinovantes tribe, and it is the capital of the Roman capital. And it wasn't, like, armed like all of the other cities. A lot of what I read was that it was actually, like, a leisure town for, like, retired soldiers.
So I read retired soldiers is ambiguous. Like, it could mean, like, soldiers that have actually retired from the army, but it could also mean, like, soldiers that are just on leave with their family.
It's basically like Florida.
It's Florida. There's a bunch of old retired people there, and there's a bunch of people there bringing their kids to Disney World.
So Boudica's marching her way on to Camelodunum, and GSP, Gay Serotonin, hears about this and sends his 9th Legion to, like, squash him down, but he's not really taking it seriously.
His 9th Legion is, like, 250 soldiers or something.
Yeah, it's like nothing. And they have to walk 3 days to get to Camelot, so they're tired as fuck.
At this point, Boudica's got, like, tens of thousands of people. Like, yeah, they're an angry mob and they're untrained for battle, but they are pissed and they are outnumbering. So they squash this 9th Legion.
They were really pissed, and part of the reason that they were pissed is because of the Trinovantes. And like I said earlier...
So the Trinovantes at this point have, like, full-on joined. And they're, like, BFFs.
And as I said earlier, that
like, the Trinovantes and the Iceni have, like, a little BFF necklace, and one side that the Iceni has...
is a broken heart, and the other is a broken heart.
And it says best friends, and the
forever.
One that the Trinovante has says forever. So I know the Trinovantes were, like, BFFville, but, like... Why did they hate the Romans? I mean, I know that Iceni had such a good reason. Why did the Trinovantes hate the Romans so much?
Camelodunum actually used to be the Trinovantes' former capital.
Yeah.
And Emperor Claudius came in and ransacked Rome back in the 40 ADs and was like, oh, now this is our capital.
Oh.
And
so that was the capital for Rome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Claudius ends up dying, and he was apparently poisoned by Nero. And that was a little rumor that went on.
Nero was the Roman emperor at this time, right?
Next one.
Okay.
The next one.
Yeah.
So after Claudius came Nero, Nero was rumored to kill Claudius. So what the rumor is that Nero was like, oh, there's this rumor that I poisoned Claudius, so I'm going to make a temple in Claudius's name. And
why not?
Why not? To, like, avoid suspicion that maybe he did something wrong.
It makes me think of OJ's, like, search for Nicole's real killer.
It's like Scott Peterson looking for Lacey Peterson. Like, it's a big phony fraud.
It's a big old, like, I totally didn't do it, so here's this big, like, church to prove it.
And he made the Trinovantes pay for it. And if you think about it, these Trinovantes are actually, like, Celtic, sort of, they don't worship Claudius, the emperor god.
They're like, who are these fucking people?
So not only do they have to pay for it and pay for this temple, they have to worship him every year, and they're like, oh, hell nah, I'm getting out of this town. And basically, Nero pushed them out.
Yeah.
And so when they join up with Boudica, they're like, hey girl, I hate these Romans.
They're just as pissed.
I hate these Romans too.
And then she was like, they raped my daughters. And they're like, that gives us even more. And so the two of them just go ham on the Roman capital. B's army approaches Camelodunum and squash the defense. Everybody that's able-bodied gets the fuck out of Seatown.
Yeah, they heard that they were coming, and they were like, oh, the men who are soldiers, go ahead and get out. But they left, they are dicks. They left the women and children there.
And the elderly, they left. I mean, I'm sure there were some women that got out of town, but, like, the women carrying the babies couldn't really go. The pregnant women, the old retired soldiers couldn't go anywhere.
And Boudica's army was savage as shit, and they didn't care. They killed them.
Oh my god. I'm sorry to say, they did some pretty brutal things to these women and children.
Pretty brutal?
Nothing.
They had no chill. Seriously.
Zero chill. On a scale of 1 to 10 chill, they had, like, -400.
Yeah, this like siege lasted 2 days.
That temple that the
Claudius
Trinovantes had to build, gone.
Bye.
Immediately.
But here's the thing, is like, we hear about all this slaughter, but there weren't any bodies found. Like,
there were some bodies.
There were, but it's not as a big
also, like,
massacre.
Where are the rest of the bodies?
And so what I read is that in this sort of Celtic, religious thing, what they would do is chop off their head and throw them in the river. And I actually read in a couple places where today they will find, like, skulls from that area in the river. So it's not unheard of that some of these bodies we may have not found, but that's because they were thrown in a river and beheaded.
Well, something they did with the bodies that weren't thrown in the river, they would take noble women, hang them up, take their breasts off their body, and sew them to their mouths.
Like,
I don't even know how to handle that.
I
don't know how to process that.
I really hope those women were dead when they did that.
I hope they were dead when they did that.
That fucking sucks.
So they just left them hanging in the middle of the city for the Romans to come back and find.
I feel bad for their titties.
Yes. I don't know how to respond to that.
But to be honest, I think this speaks to where Boudica is coming from. Her daughters were raped. She was beaten. She was saying, "Oh yeah, you're going to do that to my little girls. Look what's going to happen to your little girls. I'm going to chop their boobs off and sew it to their fucking mouths." Like, she was ready to slay.
So they keep marching.
And they go to, Boudica's not fucking done yet, so she goes to Londonium, which is London. Yeah, current day London. And gay Serotonis Paula, whatever.
He gets wind that they're coming to London.
And he's like, Londonium's kind of screwed at this point, because we're about a few hundred miles away, and we're not going to make it in time, so let's just let Boudica have her way.
Well, I think that he, knew they were coming, and was like, okay, I'm not gonna have enough time to put together the appropriate forces. I'm not gonna be able to really arm the city, so let's just let them have Londonium and we'll cash them next time. How about that?
How about that? And so Boudica marches in, and there is the angry mob goes
It is
nuts.
A slaughter, just like Seatown.
It is done. There is a fuck ton of people dead.
Looting.
Officially.
Impaling bodies.
So this is another thing that was symbolic of rape. Impaling a body is like sticking a piece of wood through somebody's body.
I don't want to talk about it.
And so I know you don't want to, but still Boudica
it happened.
Watched her daughter get raped, so she's gonna kind of show them, don't fuck with me.
So the official body count in Londonium was a fuck ton. Right? I think that was officially in the records. A fuck ton of people died.
And there was still some boob cutting and sewing on. And and they also burn that shit to the ground.
They took special effort to burn that shit to the ground.
It wasn't something that they could just literally, let's burn it. No.
Because it wasn't made of wood.
No, it was made of clay.
So they couldn't just light a match, walk away in any action movie where you're walking away from the flaming buildings. No, they had to sit there with a torch
and hold it there for hours.
Slowly wait for the buildings to burn down.
And what's really cool is that in London, a few meters underneath the ground, there's still this layer of red clay ash.
She left her mark.
She left her fucking mark. Geology, bitch. Go study it.
Girl.
Boudica.
Boudica.
So, after she burns that shit down, well, let's just say her army takes their sweet-ass little time, and they're just getting wasted on their ales and having a great time,
They spend a while at Londonium, which I think was the first misstep, as they just spent a long time there. Partying, burning, drinking.
Boob cutting. She burns that shit down to the ground.
So they move on to a place called
Verulium.
St. Albans. It's modern day St. Albans.
And gay Serotonin catches word of this and is like, oh fuck, they just burned down Camelot and Londonium. shit. So
he's had time to, like, know what's going on, know which way they're going, learn about their traits, and he's, this whole time, collecting an army.
And the Trinovantes, who, you know, originally got up with Boudica, didn't like the Catavolini because the Catavolini, like, assimilated with Rome and, like, made money off of them, so they were traitors. They were total traitors to them, so that's why they ransacked
still supporting it. Because the Iceni had also, like, leaned in with Rome, but once the shit hit the fan, and the Catilovani were still trying to collaborate with Rome, and so they were viewed as, you know what they're doing to us, and you're still against us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, basically, Gay Serotonin knows that this is happening, so he evacuates a lot of the people out of St. Albans. And so there's not very many casualties that we know of there, but what ends up happening Roman. And he ends up stationing outside of there at Watling Street and is just holed up waiting for Boudica to come.
Which, Watling Street sounds awfully British. That does not sound like a Roman name for it. So I wonder if it didn't get a name until, like, after the fact.
No, it is after the fact because they didn't have the name of the,
because they would call it Londonium Street.
It's near Watling Street. That's what the modern day people say.
So, unfortunately, after the sack of St. Albans is really where the downfall starts to happen.
Because you have Rome sitting there waiting for you to attack them. And spoiler alert, if Rome's waiting for you, don't go.
Don't go. It's not going to go well. So Boudica goes out to meet them. No.
Please don't.
And she thinks, my army is large and in charge. Because their army did at this point, like, have roughly a bajillion people.
But
I think a bajillion is a good...
It's not as in charge as Romans.
No, I mean, none of them are trained soldiers. They've got pitchforks. They've got kitchen knives.
It's like Great Uncle Bob sitting on his little wheel cabin, whatever.
No,
he's drunk. They're not trained. They're not trained.
So
it's bad.
Yeah, and so she rolls out in her chariot and gives, like, this speech about how we're gonna win this battle or perish, and everybody just goes fucking nuts. Woo! And so they gather all their, so, like, all the people that are fighting are followed by, like, their families, their women, their
and all the stuff that they looted,
all their spoils. They've got in these wagons,
just, like, sitting behind them in a horseshoe,
like in a horseshoe shape. They've got all their shit, and they're basically like, let's just put this here. Y'all watch us slay these bitches. We'll be back in a hot minute. Have some popcorn. It's going to be a good show.
So let's kind of set up the scene here. Is you have the Romans sitting on this side, and then there's, like, forest on either side of them.
And also, it's noteworthy to be like, the Romans have been trained to be soldiers since they were babies.
Babies, like, taken out of the womb,
like,
fighting.
They know and these people are just farmers and blacksmiths and whatever.
So on both sides of them, there's forest. Behind Boudica's army, there's a horseshoe of people. And then the Romans, who have, like, a tenth of the people left, are just waiting and sitting there waiting for her to attack. So she gives this great speech, and they start to charge. Boudica's army starts to charge. And the Romans sit back, and they form this little wedge formation. And they start to push.
Come on, Rome, now let's get in formation.
And pushes this army up against that little horseshoe. So they get, like, captured with themselves.
Even though they are sorely outnumbered, they are brutally killed. Like, all of them. And so they start to try to retreat, but they're like stuck. They're, like, forced into this space by their own wagons.
And they get trapped.
And so, like, the Romans just follow them as they're retreating. They brutally slaughter them all, and then take all their loot, slaughter all their children and women and elderly who are just, like, sitting around watching, and kill everybody gets killed, basically.
And Boudica knows she's fucked. So there's a couple different stories about how she actually died, and we don't really know.
All we know for sure is she definitely disappears from the record at this point.
Yeah, she either died in battle or she poisoned herself. And honestly, I like the poisoned herself because I have this, like, I picture it that she, like, you know how she offed the heads of her enemies and threw them in the river? I feel like she, like, took some poison and just drowned herself in a river. Well, and just called it a day because she's drama.
Whether it was poison or not, it makes sense to me that she would have killed herself and probably her daughters too, because if they would have been caught, what would have happened to them? You know? She had Roman women's breasts cut off and sewn to their faces.
Yeah, and
like, what were these people gonna do to her?
And the Romans, like, originally, like, raped her daughters and beat her, so...
And that's
before that
That's
happened.
a calm day. What's gonna happen to her when she's caught now? So I think she definitely, like, did away with herself.
Yeah,
that's my 2 cents.
I wouldn't blame her, but, you know... Her legend as a woman was not really documented at the time.
Yeah, so she was not, like, didn't really come into play. The first people that wrote about her, both of the primary sources, were Roman writers from about 50 to 100 years after she died. In that time frame, like that lapse, it was basically... word of mouth, like people talking around campfires, like this happened, until some Roman people finally wrote it down. I think it's interesting to note that at the time that this happened, Nero was emperor of Rome, and he was very unpopular through the times.
Yeah,
I think that even 50 years after Nero's reign, like, if you look at it now, like, when people write something about Nixon, it's never positive.
Negative.
So I think it was kind of viewed as, like, negative Nero propaganda. Like, look what happens when you have a bad ruler. This woman takes over. These people slay hundreds of thousands of our people. So that was her legend with the Roman Empire. But then she drops off the face of the earth for a good, like, 1,000 years.
But she does make a reappearance in the Renaissance time.
In the late Renaissance, like, after being non-existent in stories for a long time, she makes a reappearance. And her speech that she gives everyone in that last battle is very reminiscent of the Queen Elizabeth speech that she gives before the battle with the Spanish Armada.
Yeah, when she starts her empire. And it really, Boudica didn't reach, like, a peak of popularity until Queen Victoria. And it's kind of funny with that, too.
Yeah.
Because Queen Victoria, like... Boudica's name has been known to be pronounced a number of different ways. Boudicia.
In Welsh, they call it Budug, which is the least prettiest.
And it wasn't until Victoria that, like, her name Boudica's name kind of been synonymous with victory.
Yeah, Queen Victoria took Boudica to be, she believed it was actually a title, not a name, which is totally plausible. And when taken from ancient Celts and converted into modern English, actually meant victory, which her name was Victoria. And she claimed that's why she took that name for her queen's name. And that's the time that Boudica really hit her most popularity, like her height of popularity. And that's also the time when English imperialism, like at this time, so when Boudica was in charge, it was like, who run the world? Rome. And by Queen Victoria's time, it was like, who run the world?
England.
Exactly. So it was a story of, we may be this little island, but look, we got these fierce-ass bitches that really propelled
our
Boudica.
History.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's Boudica.
Boudica.
Rockin' everywhere.
All right. So
we have to give a shout out to one of our listeners. So last episode we discussed about how we don't know what the fuck the Holy Roman Emperor was.
We thought it was like a state of mind.
Yeah, but we had a Zelda...
Listener Zelda, not Zelda.
I have a British accent, Zelda.
No, Nathan has had about 6 beers at this point.
So it's a little bit too much.
So, listener Zelda wrote us to explain the Holy Roman Empire to us and the Holy Roman Emperor.
So, essentially, the Holy Roman Empire was what would later become Prussia, Germany, plus Austria. It was like a loose confederation of nobles and kings under the emperor, who was usually, but not always, the king of Austria.
Yeah. Before the Protestant Revolution, they were super Catholic. And after, they became a pile of Lutherans. That is her, exact quote. A pile of Lutherans, Calvinists, and Catholics.
The emperor mostly controlled foreign affairs, settled disputes as part of the empire, and was elected by a council of nobles in the empire.
So this, side note, so this wasn't like a king where you inherited it, you were elected.
It's like a democracy. It was like the empire is to Yoda, who was to the Jedi.
Yeah. After Prussia became a thing, they and Austria constantly fought about who was more German and essentially forgot how confederations work, leading to the ultimate downfall of the Holy Roman Empire.
So basically, the Holy Roman Empire is Germany and the Emperor is Yoda.
Thanks, Zelda.
I
Put it in words we can understand.
I totally understand. So, thank you guys for listening. If there's something you want us to hear, just hit us up.
We are 1,000,000% open to suggestions. We have ideas who our next episode's going to be about, but we don't have anything set in stone.
Yeah, you can email us at queenshistorypodcast@gmail.com.
Find us on Twitter at queens_podcast. We're on SoundCloud, Stitcher.
Follow us on iTunes at Queens Podcast, all one word.
All one word, Queens Podcast. Bye, everybody.
Bye, people.
Bye,
See you
bitches.
next time, girl.
Pope better have my money.